They didn't hand me a team, they handed me a wreck. The platform was a half-buried relic stitched together with outdated libraries, failing cron jobs, and variable names like Final V3, this one for real. When Roniel, the CTO, dropped the assignment in my lap, he did it with a grin that almost passed for trust. If anyone can revive this Arlise, it's you. Then came the contract, 30 grand in completion bonus hidden somewhere between legal jargon and a reminder that I was still at will. And a title platform lead. It sounded real. Like power. Like permanence. I should have known better. The back end barely responded. Log and lag felt like molasses. Dependencies clashed like rival gangs. But I didn't flinch. I rolled up my sleeves and started rewiring the skeleton. Nights blurred into weekends. I missed birthdays, laundry piled up, my cat started sleeping directly on my keyboard for company. And still I coded. When the system finally stabilized, they gave it a name. New Horizon. Joel from marketing put together a slide deck with shiny graphs. Diane from HR mentioned it at the quarterly review as a true team transformation. I sat through those meetings and listened as they polished up my work and handed out credit like Halloween candy. No one mentioned me. I was the invisible thread stitching the code together. Every improved load time, every clean endpoint, they all had my fingerprints on them. But I wasn't on the slide. I wasn't on the email. I wasn't even on the hallway. Thank you poster they slapped up near the snack bar. Still, I said nothing. I told myself to be patient. The bonus was coming. The title was already mine on paper. Eventually, someone would see it all for what it was. But the deeper I got, the quieter it felt. The system responded only to me, and yet it felt like they were preparing it for someone else's nameplate. Maybe they never meant for me to launch it. Maybe I was only here to build it so someone else could stand in the spotlight. The night I wrote subroutine V14, the office lights flickered above my head like they were debating whether I deserved clarity. Everyone else had gone home. Even the janitor had stopped nodding at me by then. It was just me, the terminal window, and the platform I was holding together with borrowed time. It started as a simple idea, a validator. Something to track elevated credentials, ensure integrity in admin access during deployment. But the more I wrote, the more precise I became. I tied the validation logic to my credential fingerprint. Not because I wanted control, because I knew what it felt like to be locked out of something I built. It wasn't a backdoor. It didn't do damage. It didn't steal, leak, or break. It watched. It checked. And if someone tried to reroute access in a way that violated the teardown protocol I documented, if they tried to erase me mid-flight, it would quietly and visibly refuse to comply. Every line was commented. Every function labeled. I pushed it to our private repo and mirrored it on staging. No secrets. Just silence. They'd never see it unless they looked. And if they did, it would look like what it was, a failsafe. I'd been through this before. Different company, different CTO. Same pattern, promises, sprint marathons, then the sudden drop. You spend months holding up the system, and when it's ready to shine, they swap you for someone better at smiling in meetings. That wasn't going to happen again. Not without friction. Not without record. So I kept working. Clean code. No flags. My commits were immaculate. But late at night, when my fingers hovered over the keyboard just a second too long, I could feel it tightening the line between diligence and defense. They saw progress. I saw warning signs. And somewhere deep inside the architecture, something began to whisper my name every time the system blinked to life. It started small, just a Slack emoji. One of those smug little reactions under a message I posted about deployment sequencing. A thumbs up from someone who'd never touched the pipeline. Then Travis Langston began replying to threads he had no business in. Great work, team, he wrote under a detailed post I'd spent 2 hours crafting. It was the kind of update that only made sense if you'd read through API logs and understood what a session token was. Travis didn't. He had that MBA shine, fresh from Wharton hairline, already receding from too much pretending. His title, VP of Strategic Systems. A label vague enough to mean everything and nothing at once. He joined engineering stand-ups with his camera off, and his mic muted the digital equivalent of loitering with purpose. The first red flag came in a stakeholder deck. I wasn't supposed to see it, but a junior accidentally forwarded it. My architecture notes my exact flow diagrams, rewritten in passive voice, and attributed to lead strategist Travis Langston. No footnote. No shared credit. just my work tucked behind a newer, whiter smile. I sent Roniel a quick Slack message. Calm. Professional. Hey, notice some of my documentation is being reused under Travis's name. Can we clarify attribution? No response. Not that day. Not the next. Then came the calendar update, our weekly 1-1 canceled indefinitely. When I passed Diane in the hallway, she didn't even pretend. No nod. No fake smile. Just eyes that went past me like I'd never stood there at all. Things shifted quickly after that. My access started timing out. Permissions I'd always had were suddenly locked behind new approval chains. A BizOps analyst named Everson pinged me to ask what auth redundancy meant in a function I'd personally authored. I replied with grace. I documented every answer. And quietly, I continued to push clean, tested commits. Every one of them annotated, everyone mirrored offsite. They thought I couldn't see it, how they were phasing me out without confrontation, erasing me from my own rebuild. But I wasn't confused. I was watching a quiet replacement unfold in real time. The invite hit my inbox at 7:12 a.m. No subject line. Just quick sync. HR plus CTO. 30 minutes blocked out between the first coffee of the day and the daily deployment queue. No agenda, no prep. Just a meeting link and a hollow sense of finality. I already knew. I logged in 1 minute early. Diane was already there, too cheerful for the hour. Her voice had that game show host cadence, overbright, overly practiced. Thanks so much for hopping on, she said like this was a coffee chat and not a guillotine. Roniel joined 2 minutes late. Camera off. Typical. The man who once called me the spine of the platform now couldn't even look me in the face. Diane cleared her throat. So first, we just want to acknowledge the incredible effort you've put into New Horizon. You've been truly instrumental. I stayed silent. That said, she continued. We've hit some unexpected financial constraints heading into Q2. And unfortunately, we'll be parting ways with some team members, including you. No fanfare, no bridge, just effective immediately. I didn't blink. I didn't ask for an explanation. I asked one thing, and the completion bonus? There was a pause. The kind that stretches long enough to fit the truth inside. Right, Diane said, adjusting her smile. So since the platform technically hasn't launched yet, your role is ending prior to the milestone. The bonus clause doesn't apply. I nodded once like I was confirming a dinner reservation. Understood. Roniel unmuted just long enough to say, we'll ensure access is transitioned smoothly. Transitioned? Like I was a file being dragged into a folder marked past tense. The call ended in under 7 minutes. I stared at the empty Zoom screen for 10 more, the cursor blinking like it expected me to type a response. But there was nothing left to say. I poured the last of my bitter office brand coffee into a chipped mug, opened my laptop, and began logging out of everything Slack, Zoom, Jira, Confluence. Then I opened my dev environment. And I found the one line of code they'd never understand until it was far too late. The office was still quiet when I ran the last logout. Slack first, then Jira, then GitHub. Each one felt like closing a chapter in a book I was no longer allowed to finish. I archived my folders, zipped my documentation, exported a clean portfolio with every diagram and commit tied to my name. No drama, just dignity. Then I opened my local dev environment. Subroutine V14 sat where I left it, tucked into the validator chain like a whisper. It didn't shout. It didn't interfere. It simply confirmed that the person accessing high-level privileges had the right to be there, and that one specific credential was still active. Mine. I hovered over the line, binding my digital fingerprint to the validator. It would have taken a clever eye to catch what it was really doing. On the surface, it looked like a concurrency limiter, something to throttle admin tokens during peak traffic. But deep in the flow, it ran a handshake, a credential loop only my device could complete. It wasn't malice. It was balance. My name wasn't going to disappear without leaving a seam in the floor. I deleted that one line. Not the function, not the file. Just the tether between system and operator. No warning popped up. No, are you sure the system simply accepted it, saved it, and blinked back at me like nothing had changed? And in a way, nothing had yet. They could still launch. The dashboards would still light up. The interface would work. It would look ready. But when the time came to hand over the keys and hit ignition, something would be missing. Like spark plugs in a polished engine. They'd press the gas and get nothing but silence. I pushed the change. logged out of my dev tools, then zipped up my hard drive, slung my backpack over one shoulder, and walked out of that glass box as quietly as I'd entered it. I didn't slam a door. I didn't leave a message. I just walked away while the system they stole kept breathing in the dark, waiting for a voice it would no longer recognize. At exactly 8:00 a.m., NextG Corp flipped the switch. I wasn't there to see the countdown, but I saw the LinkedIn post. Travis suit slightly too sharp, smile slightly too smug. Proud to announce the launch of our fully rebuilt platform. Scalability, elegance, impact. They used one of my mock-ups as the hero image slightly recolored watermark cropped. I sipped my coffee from a WeWork lounge 4 blocks away. The window overlooked nothing in particular, but I liked the way the light caught the side of my cup. It felt cleaner than the office I'd left. At 8:04, I refreshed the public API logs. Timeout errors, a trickle at first. By 8:09, social login was failing across the board. MFA looping. Admin credentials returning undefined. At 8:12, a user posted on Reddit anyone else locked out of their account. Lost access to everything. The replies came fast. Same. Whole dashboard's blank. I reset my password, now it's stuck. I just paid for this. What the hell? Internally, I imagined the panic devs scrambling, rolling back commits, pushing hotfixes no one QA'd. I'd seen it before. Only this time, I wasn't inside the room. I was the quiet absence they hadn't accounted for. By 8:18, Travis's launch post had its comments turned off. By 8:31, it was gone altogether. The system hadn't crashed, it had hesitated. It was standing still, waiting for a hand it no longer recognized. The validator was doing exactly what I built it to do, protect the platform from unauthorized privilege escalation. I never wanted to use it. I just needed it to exist. I stirred the last of the sugar into my coffee, watching the grains vanish without resistance. The system wouldn't implode all at once. It would unravel thread by thread until they realized the code was still functioning. It just wasn't letting them in. And while their dashboards dimmed and their calls echoed into static, I opened my laptop and added a new line to my resume. By mid-morning, someone at NextG finally did what they should have done a week ago. They opened the validator logs. The subroutine was right there, buried in plain sight. Function signature, credential path, authorization metadata, my name stamped on every line. Credential handshake failsafe, authored by A. Mordell, reviewed 1-13, approved R. Vaxter. I hadn't hidden a thing. It was all documented. The pull request, the peer review, the final sign-off by Raniel himself. They'd approved it without reading. Too eager to check a box and move on. Now they were staring at the box as it burst into smoke. The junior devs, probably the only ones with enough curiosity left to read, pieced it together first. A timestamp matched my final commit. A diff showed the missing credential call. A Confluence page outlined the admin teardown protocol. Also authored by me. It wasn't sabotage. It was structure. They just hadn't built around it. I imagined the Slack threads lighting up. Travis tagging everyone in the launch war room channel. Diane sending HR-safe messages like, let's remain solution-focused. Joel, if he was still pretending to be CTO, pacing while someone tried to reverse engineer a system that already told them what went wrong. They hadn't expected this. They thought the problem would be loud, an explosion, a delete-all, something traceable. But what I left behind wasn't noise. It was silence. Silence with a signature. Back in the cafe, I leaned back in my chair. My inbox had 3 new messages from recruiters. One of them mentioned NextG by name. Were you involved in the New Horizon project? Architecture was impressive. We'd love to talk. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I opened my own audit logs, stored privately encrypted, logged hourly. Just a mirror of their system, a record of its life while I held the keys. Every flag, every warning, every approval. They had built their empire on my foundation, but they hadn't bothered to learn the ground it stood on. And now the cracks weren't just visible, they were traceable. Travis was the first to call. I let it ring out. Twice. Then Raniel texted. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just, can we talk? I waited 5 minutes, then sent a PDF. No greetings. No passive-aggressive commentary. Just 3 bullet points in bold, 1200 HR emergency consulting, 3-hour minimum, 50% upfront wire transfer required. Below that one line in smaller font rates increase if resolution window exceeds 24 hours. There was no reply. Not right away. An hour later, the wire hit. $1,800 even. They didn't haggle. That was smart. I arrived the next morning at 8:02 a.m. wearing a navy blazer and boots that clicked a little too sharply on the polished concrete. The lobby receptionist didn't know my name, probably knew. I didn't bother explaining. I swiped my badge. Still worked. Conference room B was already crowded. Travis looked like he hadn't slept. Diane's smile cracked at the edges. Joel sat with his laptop open posture, defensive as if that screen could shield him from everything he'd ignored. I sat, opened mine, and said nothing. Joel cleared his throat. We appreciate you coming in. I looked at him like he was a poorly maintained endpoint. I'll need isolated access. Full logs. No one touches anything unless I say so. I said. Also, your VPN's leaking credentials. Not my problem, but it will be if you ignore it. No one argued. I got to work. It took 26 minutes. Routing errors corrected. Validator logic verified. Session integrity restored. Admin roles reinstated this time with 2FA because clearly they'd skipped my original documentation. Then without changing my expression, I ran one last command, a diagnostic pull from subroutine V14's tamper log. Timestamp. IP, device ID. One red entry manual modification attempt. Validator bypass. March 14th, 9:42 a.m. Right after they fired me. Joel leaned in. What is that? That I said is proof someone tried to disable my code after termination without authorization. I tapped a key. The report zipped and encrypted itself with a passphrase only I knew. Across the table, Diane's face went pale as toner. I unplugged my laptop and slid a printed invoice across the table. I didn't need more than half an hour. Once I had clean access, the system folded open like a book I'd written in my own hand. The routing logic was intact. The validator stack responded exactly as designed. The platform hadn't broken, it had stalled waiting for a valid key. For me, 26 minutes start to finish. No drama, no raised voices, just a hum of relief from the machines when someone finally understood them again. But the real work came after. I navigated to the nested utility files 3 layers down beneath functions named Sanitize String Session Monitor and DB Sync Helper. Harmless names. Places no one would think to look. Hidden in plain sight was subroutine V14's tamper log. It had tracked everything. One entry was highlighted in red. Manual modification attempt, March 14th, NES, 9:42 a.m. Origin admin console, IP matched to CTO device. That was the morning they fired me. They hadn't just removed me. They'd tried to strip the validator logic after the fact without a teardown, without protocol, and without understanding what they were touching. The system hadn't broken in protest. It had resisted on principle. I exported the log as an encrypted archive, password protected. Then I opened my bag, slid out a cream-colored envelope, and placed it on the table. Inside a printed invoice. Black ink. Clean formatting. Line 1, emergency recovery. 3 hours, Aurora's a $1,200 shower. $3,600, line 2. Diagnostic and tamper audit. $1,200, line 3. Completion bonus, retroactive per contract milestone. $30,000 on top a sticky note in neat handwriting. Completion bonus, retroactive. Travis blinked. Diane looked like she wanted to dissolve. Joel said nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I tucked my laptop into my bag and left the conference room with the quiet calm of someone who already knew the ending. Behind me, the system kept running. Behind them, the log remained unerasable. I walked through the same glass doors they thought would close on me forever. And by the time I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed with a new message. A week later, Roniel was gone. No farewell email, no all-hands announcement. Just a short line from legal buried in an internal memo. We thank him for his contributions. Translation. You cost us 6 figures and credibility. Travis wasn't fired, not technically. He was reassigned to something called Strategic Initiatives, which sounded like a place to sit quietly until the board forgot about him. His LinkedIn post about the platform reappeared a few days later, this time with no photo and half the adjectives deleted. A ghost version of a victory he never earned. I didn't follow up. I didn't need to. The invoice cleared in full within 72 hours. No edits, no questions. Just a wire transfer with a transaction note that read, fulfilled. Meanwhile, I had my own launch to prepare. It wasn't flashy. No press, no confetti. Just a clean, efficient platform built in quiet collaboration with a competitor who'd been watching NextG's implosion with sharp curiosity. I'd started building it the same week they cut me loose. Same city, different table. This time on my terms. No legacy code, no fragile dependencies, no committee sabotage. Just logic that made sense, infrastructure that scaled, and contracts that spelled out exactly who owned what. By the time their system stabilized, still running mostly on my architecture, patched with my documentation, I was watching from the rooftop of a different building. Coffee in hand boots, up sun on my cheek. They didn't know it, but every time an admin accessed a core feature, every time a client logged in smoothly, every time support didn't get a ticket, that was my name humming under the hood. I didn't need them to remember me. The code remembered. And as I pushed the final commit to my new build and watched the dashboard bloom with data that worked the first time, I thought about the line I'd etched into the footer of my architecture notes, just in case anyone ever looked closely. The architect remains even when the room forgets her name. I closed the tab, leaned back, and opened a blank slate.